Hello, dear David. How are you? I hope this video finds you well. The purpose of this video is to give you a feedback on the classes that you let me in. Thank you so much for that. Remember, our starting point was when I did the first observation of class at the beginning of the agreement or the project. And in that session, we find out that I was happy to see that you mainly used English to guide the lesson. Spanish was only used as a last resource or just like to communicate aspects that were not related specifically to the lesson content. And I also want to point out that I was happy to see that the methodology that you used made students being the center of their learning process. However, that day, like we discussed the importance of formulating the objective of the class having the Bloom taxonomy as a guide. Therefore, we decided that in the next class that I would attend, the idea was to see for future classes how well you were formulating the objective and the sequence followed in the class, the use of materials, and lastly, formative assessment strategies. So let's start with the first one. The focus area is objectives and sequence. So don't forget to keep in mind to formulate the objective having the Bloom taxonomy as a guide. Let's recall the one that you formulated yesterday. It said, finish the lesson and prepare the World Peace Festival. Even though this is very clear for students, the idea is that you use a verb from that list that will lead the students to understand the purpose of what they are doing. That, for example, putting in practice the communicative aspects of English, or at the end of the lessons the students will be able to communicate their role in the Work Peace Festival, or they will be able to create a lesson plan in order to put in practice some grammar topics. That was the second part of the lesson you did yesterday. But yeah, just to give you an example about it. Okay, now let's continue talking about the objectives and sequence. So I was happy to see that you don't only announce the goal of the class, but also announced the social emotional skill. And you ask the students to make them understand what is it about. Remember you said option generation, and you ask them, okay, but what does it mean? And they gave you some ideas. Then you set up the activities they were going to do, and then you start doing them. For example, the routine that you guys always do at the beginning, like with a conversational question. In this case, what did you do yesterday? And that way you were encouraging the use of communicative approach that we set up also for the PI. And then you have some agreements which now they know by heart, because it looks like you have been doing that in different classes, so they are aware. And then at the end of the class, you also announce what was the purpose, and you reviewed what was the activity or the homework they needed to do. Okay, now the second aspect, the use of materials. A class with only the board and the distribution of the classroom the way you did is good enough. Like, you don't always have to have technology in order to have a good class. However, if you have their computer and the TV, well, you could have used it. Uh, for example, to make them research some of the questions you were making, or just to give them examples on how to do a lesson plan according to a chart that you could have showed them. But just board and a good class management that you do really well is good enough. And then the last focus area we decided to work on is the formative assessment. Mm, at the end, for example, it is nice not only to monitor the activities they are doing in class within the time they are doing it, but at the end you could also include like an exit ticket. Like, for example, write down in an exit ticket, how did you feel, what you understood from the class, what would you do differently, or what would you like to do or repeat next class. Just to give you a little idea of how also formative assessment works, it gives you information to change and take decisions for the future. And that's it. Thank you, David, for listening to me. And I'll see you for the last meeting that will be on October 18th. Bye bye.